Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Stotra Satya Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Hardas Thakur ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Vrindavan ki Shri Mayapur Dham ki Shri Pancha Tattva ki Jai Shri Radha Madhava Sasaki Vrinda ki Nishingadev Bhagavam ki Jai Tulasi Devi ki Jai Gṛhāt Mridanga ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna everyone, a very good morning to all of you. Today we'll be reading a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It is a pleasure to be here in Sridham Mayapur. After you're away for a long time, you realize how auspicious, how beneficial, and how amazing is the arrangement for the devotees in Sridham Mayapur. The opportunities to elevate our consciousness, to have sadhu sangha, which is very rare everywhere you go. It's so available in Sridham Mayapur. How many sadhus are here daily doing austerities, reciting the scriptures, and trying to elevate their own lives. So being back in Mayapur is a great personal pleasure. And also with the service that I do, which is traveling and looking after the farms, and helping them out to produce food and produce good ingredients for the deities and the devotees. When you come back and you look around, you see how much possibilities we have in Sridham Mayapur. So it's also a great pleasure. So for me it's an honor to be here in the middle of such an incredible audience, devotees who have given so much up to live here in the Holy Dham, have adjusted their lives, and are somewhat practicing the sublime process of Bhakti Yoga to go back to Godhead. So I pray that I have your blessings, that I can say something beneficial, both for myself and for all of you, and for the pleasure of the predecessors, acharyas, and spiritual masters. So we're reading from the second canto. I hear you've been reading here. And today is the chapter 1, verse number 16. Is that correct? Okay. So let's read the Sanskrit. gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ śucau vivikta āsīno vidhivat kalpitāsane gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane, gṛhāt pravrajito dhīraḥ, puṇya-tīrtha-jalāplutaḥ, śucau vivikta āsīno, vidhivat kalpitāsane. Gṛhāt, from one's home. Pravrajitaḥ, having gone out. Dhīraḥ, self-controlled. Puṇya, pious. Tīrtha, sacred place. Jala-āplutaḥ, fully washed. Śucau, cleansed. Vivikte, solitary. Āsīnaḥ, seated. Vidhivat, according to regulations. Kalpita, having done. Āsane, on a sitting place. So Srila Prabhupada translated this verse as follows. One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. So let's repeat it. One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. And here comes the purport of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It's interesting to note that this purport is one of the first purports Prabhupada writes in the West. I mean, these 16 verses so far, he travels with the first canto translated, and that's all his asset. And here we can see the urgency and his impression of his mission, now having understood the field he's going to work with. So it's very interesting what he writes. He writes. The first sentence, I think, is of extreme value. To prepare oneself for a better life, one must get out of one's so-called home. We're going to explore this sentence in many ways during this small presentation. The system of varṇāśrama-dharma, or sanātana-dharma, prescribes retirement from family encumbrances as early as possible after one has passed 50 years of age. Modern civilization is based on family comforts, the highest standards of amenities, and therefore, after retirement, everyone expects to live a very comfortable life in a well-furnished home, decorated with fine ladies and children, without any desire to get out of such a comfortable home. Srila Prabhupada has described what has happened to us after the Industrial Revolution. The idea that I can remove any work to make life easy and comfortable is what drives the industry. Every car, every luxury item, the phone, the remote controls, that increasing mentality builds on an already existing mentality in society. And here, Srila Prabhupada is expanding on that. High government officers and ministers stick to their prized post until death, and they neither dream nor desire to get out of homely comforts. Bound by such hallucinations, materialistic men prepare various plans for a still more comfortable life. But suddenly, cruel death comes without mercy and takes away the great plan maker against his desire, forcing him to give up the present body for another body. Such a plan maker is thus forced to accept another body in one of the 8,400,000 species of life, according to the fruits of the work he has performed. In the next life, persons who are too much attached to family comforts are generally awarded lower species of life on account of sinful acts performed during a long duration of sinful life, and thus all the energy of human life is spoiled. Another mark point for us to look at this purport. Prabhupada is saying all the efforts of human life, which is so rare, is finished. In order to be saved, now he's giving the solution. In order to be saved from the danger of spoiling the human form of life and being attached to unreal things, one must take warning of death at the age of 50, if not earlier. The principle is that one should take it for granted that the death warning is already there. Even prior to the attainment of 50 years of age, and thus at any stage of life, one should prepare himself for a better next life. The system of sanātana-dharma institution is so made that the follower is trained for the better next life without any chance that the human life will be spoiled. So Prabhupada is connecting perfecting one life to preserving the human form of life. The holy places all over the world are meant for the residential purpose of retired persons, getting ready for a better next life. Intelligent person must go there at the end of life, and for that matter, after 50 years of age, to live a life of spiritual regeneration. What a beautiful sentence. Spiritual regeneration. For the sake of being freed from family attachment, which is considered to be the shackle of material life. So now Prabhupada is revealing what's holding us back to the material world. One is recommended to quit home just to get rid of material attachment. You see, the meaning, the hidden meaning behind this. One is recommended to quit home just, he used the word just, to get rid of material attachment. So the main point is get rid of material attachment. Because, he's going to explain, one who sticks to family life until death cannot get rid of material attachment. And as long as one is materially attached, one cannot understand spiritual freedom. Here's another perfect sentence, spiritual freedom. Prabhupada is finally revealing what is freedom. There's no freedom without spiritual freedom, because spiritual freedom is what relieves you from material attachment. So all the people who claim to be defenders of freedom, apostles of freedom, if they're materially attached, they are not free. At the end of the day, they must subdue to their desires. And finally, at the moment of death, they're not free to choose where they will go. That is connected to what they have done. So Prabhupada is coining spiritual freedom. So we all, the spiritual freedom movement, that's going to be interesting. One should not, however, now he warns us, be complacent, be self-complacent, simply by leaving home or by creating another home at the holy place. Here's a very interesting reflection Srila Prabhupada is saying. Either lawfully or unlawfully. So he's even considering both cases. Many persons leave home to go to such holy place, but due to bad association, again become family men by illicit connection with the opposite sex. So here he is saying the illicit connection is the point which brings us down. The illusory energy of matter is so strong that one is apt to be under such illusion at every stage of life, even after quitting one's happy home. Therefore, it is essential, so Prabhupada is concluding, that one practice self-control by celibacy without the least desire for sex indulgent. Now he's giving here the gold bar. That's what we all have to strive for. For a man desiring to improve the condition of his existence, self-indulgence is considered suicidal, or even worse. Therefore, to live apart from family life means to become self-controlled in regard to sense desires. Now, how he's giving the real meaning of leaving home. The method is that one should have a duly sanctified sitting place made of straw, deerskin, and carpet, and thus, sitting on it, he should chant the holy name of the Lord without offense, as prescribed above. He gives one step further from the purport. He adds, chant the holy names. The whole process is to drag the mind from material engagements and fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. This simple process alone will help one advance to the highest stage of spiritual success. Srila Prabhupada ki Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjanan Shalakaya Chakshurun Militanyana Tasmaye Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhatale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Kriparitaya Vetmai Sarataya Prema Sindhu Varete. Hare Krishna. What a beautiful purport. And when we look at this purport, we have to first understand it's situated, if you take the Bhagavatam as the body of Krishna, this is the lotus feet. So we are discussing the topics which are the base of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In this specific session, we're going to deal with Ashtanga Yoga, meditation on the Virat Rupa, and finally the creation is going to be spoken here. The previous verses which lead up to here are answering one question made in the last canto, in chapter 19, verse number 24, when Parikshit Maharaj makes the question, what is the duty of men in general, and most specifically at the moment of death? And Prabhupada writes in that purport that because the moment of death is the most important, that question is more important. And here the sages, specifically Shukadeva Goswami, is answering, what is that? So for the previous verse, he's been explaining what should not be heard, what should not be done. And then he glorifies the process of bhakti. And there's a verse, the verse 11, specifically brings that it doesn't matter if you're full of desires, if you have no desires, or if you are self-satisfied, yoginam, you should always chant the holy names, because that is the ultimate goal. So that is the utmost glorification of the process we are following. And from the last verse, 15, until verse 39, Ashtanga Yoga is going to be described. And we may think, why is Ashtanga Yoga being described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is described in the pastimes of the Lord? That's a genuine question. Many times we think we have nothing to do with yoga. We are bhakti yogis, we are above. But here, bhakti yoga is being described, and we're going to investigate all the 8 processes of yoga is being described from verse 16 to 19. And we're also going to have a look at the trajectory of some Vaishnavas who entered Vanaprastha life, like Srila Prabhupada, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And if we have time, Vidura also did a marvelous entry in that ashram. If time allows, we may have a look at the difference between renunciation and sannyas. And then we have some final reflections. This verse is saying one should leave home and practice self-control. So that is yama, what you should do. And one should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place. And one should bathe. Let me just check here, small detail. Yes. So the first is niyama. Leave home. That's what you should do. And the niyama, in a sacred place, you should bathe regularly. So that is the second process of yoga. And the third process of yoga, which is asana. You should sit and you should sit down in a lonely place, sanctified. And then on the next verses you follow, every aspect of yoga is being described. In verse 17, the pranayama aspect is being described. The next verse says, after sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember 3 transcendental letters, A-U-M, Om, and by regulating the breathing process. So here pranayama is brought. And if you go on until verse 19, you find that the 8 stages of yoga are being described. So this is a very important information, because the Bhagavatam here is talking to a yogi who is in an attached stage. And it's telling him how he should progress to eliminate that attachment. So that's what's being dealt with right here. And the clue which we take is how to transfer your attachment from family life, which being the main activity of every one of us who have a family, have children. We know what it is like to have children. Stay awake at night, adjust your life, adjust your country to educate them. Move to Mayapur, quit everything you're doing for their benefit, and hope that the Dham will have a beneficial effect with them. So that stage involves so many aspects. The Grihastha ashram is one of the most difficult ashrams, because you have to balance so many elements. Self-control, fix your meditation, yogic process in the Supreme, attend your family, have time for all their emotional needs, which could be unlimited in some cases. And to be able to respond to all of those roles and still be a yogi, it's something remarkable in a Grihastha ashram. So it's very easy to get out of the Grihastha ashram and situate oneself in the Grihamedi aspect, which is to indulge in all the distractions the world has to offer. You just need to open your phone and they now read your mind before you think it's there. Just saying, oh, you want to travel? Here it is. You want to buy this? Here, Amazon. Isn't it? Do you face this element in your daily phone life? The phone is reading the mind. Sometimes even things you didn't even say, because they say whatever you say, they record, they sell the data, and it comes back to you as a product. Even something I think it's there, and I say, what? Now the phone has telepathic powers. He can understand what I'm thinking, and then he transforms into a product. So there's so much distraction out there. So to remain a Grihastha is not an easy task, especially if you consider that a Grihastha is supposed to be someone who guarantees that his descendants will be Krishna consciousness. The instruction, if you cannot be Krishna, if you cannot guarantee that your children, your disciples, your employees, your subjects will be Krishna conscious, don't take that road. So what a responsibility. Each one of us who thinks, oh, Grihastha ashram, finally I'm going to get some juice out of life. Actually assigning a very deep contract worth millions of dollars. When you calculate, it's millions. We don't think it is, but if you actually do the math, it comes to millions. If you're in America and you consider high school and then college life, it adds up. So here the point is the transition of that scenario to a purifying stage. And of course, when you read these verses, the first thing which comes to mind is that we should leave home and go to the holy Dham and just chant. That's the first immediate response from reading this. But Prabhupada is giving deeper meanings to that. And his personal life was an incredible example how that happened. If you have a look, his gṛhāt life, from the beginning he said, was not very successful, because he starts saying that he didn't like his wife very much. So he wanted to marry for a second time. And he was discouraged. Says, this is not very beneficial, because you're going to travel. If you travel, it's difficult to explain having more than one marriage. So, and his father finally says, on your ultimate self-realization process, not being too much attached to family life is going to be beneficial for you. So Prabhupada speaks about this with his disciples. But he tried. He tried to be a very genuine businessman, and he really believed that he could raise money to start his mission. And finally, when he realizes that it's not possible, then he leaves home in 1954. And he goes to Jhansi. And as we know, most of you know his trajectory. In Jhansi, it doesn't go like he expected. And then he goes to Delhi, to the Gaudiya Math, to the Gaudiya Sangha. And again, it doesn't go like he wants, because he wants to print his magazine, Back to Godhead, and the in-charge believes that's not so important. So Prabhupada can immediately feel that his desire, which is to preach this globally, will not happen there. But he's in a very difficult economical situation. I mean, the situation is drastic. When you read, I was reading the Lilamrita again, and you feel like crying. What situation he was exposed to. He didn't have money for the transportation. He would buy the paper with a lot of effort by selling the magazines, and he would then go to Vrindavan. But when you look backwards, connecting the dots, you could see that Prabhupada had an incredible time of preparation. And his example, if you look back, is so remarkable and an example for all of us. Because you can understand how every stage was a purification. And finally, when he's in Vrindavan, and he decides to write the Srimad Bhagavatam, because he's trying to knock on ministers' doors, prime ministers' doors, reach wealthy people's doors, and the doors are not opening. So someone tells him, you should write the Srimad Bhagavatam. You should write a book, because with a book, and then he immediately starts doing the work, and then help starts to come. And he published the first book. And then he sells it to the government. And now you can see India at that time is going towards industrial life, modern life, imitating the West. And he's writing his books, you should not do that. And they're buying the books, and he's not changing the message, because he finally found a customer. He's selling the books as they are. And finally he gets the help from Sumati Moraji, as all of you know, and then he prints the whole 3 sets of the first canto, and then he travels to America. So here we are reading Prabhupada having reached America after a long dream is fulfilled. The dream of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that this message was preached in the West, and therefore I can see some Western brahmacharis here. So that was the vision of the acharyas, that you would be one day reached. Intelligent men in the West would take up bhakti process. And from that, Prabhupada bringing the Westerners here, the Indian civilization woke up and said, whoa, our civilization is great. And now you see a whole revival of India civilization in India. So it's incredible to see the formula, how successful that formula was. And Prabhupada is there, and now he's writing, and he's writing very strongly, one should leave home. And that has such a deep implication in our lives, because many people, like me, I'm not ready to leave everybody and go. And they're not ready that I do that. And many of you may feel the same. So we may initially get torn. Am I wrong? Should I actually leave home? Is that what expected of me? When I went to research Prabhupada and I was reading, he writes quite interestingly in a magazine. But before that, just to illustrate, I missed this part. He wrote a poem, Vrindavan Bhajan, in 1958, which kind of illustrates the situation he was in. He says, Prabhupada says here, everyone has abandoned me. See me penniless, wife, relatives, friends, brothers, everyone. This is misery, but it gives me a laugh. I sit alone and laugh. In this Maya Sansara, whom am I to love? Where have my loving father and mother gone now? And where are my elders, who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names. So you can understand the mood Prabhupada was in. This is Vrindavan before, like 7 years before he travels. That was deep, you know. And just in the same year, he writes, he writes in his magazine, of course, there could be a compatible balance between family service and devotional service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had described two simultaneous obligations, bodily and spiritual. Social status, mental development, cleanliness, nourishment, and the struggle for existence were all bodily obligations. The activities of devotional service to Krishna were spiritual, and the two should parallel one another. So when we go back to Prabhupada in 58, he's saying, after all this experience in Vrindavan, he's saying, if we understand Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that's what he did. And he says, and the two should parallel one another. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, his family was a source of spiritual encouragement. And he used his social position to advance his preaching. So here Prabhupada is bringing a deeper meaning that if you are situated well in spiritual life, then your family life is not a liability. It is an asset. And there's a saying by His Holiness Devamrita Swami. He says, we renounce liability, not assets. Which is very interesting. That'll be a true meaning of renunciation. You renounce that which is a liability to self-realization, not that which is an asset. And in the case of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his family life, his being a judge was an asset. Like I know some devotees who are PhD from Oxford, that's an asset for their preaching. Because when they present themselves, they immediately respect it. So that's a very subtle, important point. Distinguish what is a liability to spiritual life and what is an asset. And then one might ask, so what is vanaprastha, actually? In our society, we don't see this very clearly defined. We see student life very defined. Brahmacharis are here, students, gurukulis, grihastas. But then when you come to 50, you get into this gray area which tends to become gray until some of us, become sannyasis and they're glorious. But this gray area, disappearing area, is not well defined. So when you go to the Bhagavatam, 11 canto, 18.1, varṇāśrama-dharma is being discussed. There is a definition. And Prabhupada in the Purport says, Vanaprastha is intended as a gradual transition from materialistic family life to a stage of complete renunciation. So that's the definition of vanaprastha. And that explains why it's not black and white, because it's a transition. It's a transition. Renounce life. Therefore, it was possible to achieve it without going to forest. Prabhupada is now emphasizing. Even if one remained in the dress of a householder, he could be free from the attachment. So again, Prabhupada is bringing the point that attachment is what we have to get rid of, not the family. But sometimes it is necessary. And this is exactly what modern Western life is based on. It's based on family comfort, as we read, without any desire to get out of it. Isn't it? As a matter of fact, we have an English saying, an Englishman's home is his castle. And there are cases where people have killed other people in their homes and they claim, it's in my home. And they got in trouble. But it comes even further from our Latin origin. Et domus sua quici est tutissimum refugium. In English. And each man's home is his safest refuge. So we can see a diametrical reflection. Veda is saying you should leave home for self-realization. The West is saying home is your ultimate refuge, where your old age is going to be taken care by your wealth and money and family and prestige and society. So Prabhupada is actually illuminating us that that's not the ultimate. The ultimate is to be self-realized. And then, of course, when also talk about renunciation, we have to see many times we are afraid to renounce our identity to do something bigger. Like Prabhupada, he was in India penniless, and his mission was to go to the West and preach. And he renounced that idea that I cannot do, because he usually said, if Krishna wants, I can do. So why can't one of us be chosen by Mahaprabhu to do something great? So to renounce that idea I cannot do is also renunciation. Because you understand, if Krishna wants, it will be done. I'll do my best, but the result is up to him. Good or bad is up to him. So that's also another aspect of renunciation. And on that regard, in my service, I hear many times, many devotees say, well, because I have to promote farm life. Prabhu, I'm a city person, I can't farm. So I could equally say, you have to renounce that identity. And if it's Krishna's wish, you have to farm. Actually, Prabhupada said, farm, 4 times. Distribute books, he said 3 times. And that's something which on another day, which is not a Vanaprastha class, we can explore. But I'd like to add this small comment. If we were to have, by now, on a modest line, 600 successful settlements where abundance is not a problem, what is the problem of being a renunciant? When you have abundant ghee and grains and vegetables and sabji, what is it to accomplish, to accommodate 2, 3, 10, 15 families or 15 couples or 15 individuals? It's nothing. 15 times 600 is almost 10,000. Oh, it's almost 6,000, 7,000, something like that. Family renunciants could be accommodating. We have 60. If we had 10 times more abundant settings, there's no problem for the Vanaprasthas. In an abundant place, it's no problem to accommodate people. And actually the Vanaprastha, and here I come to my final point of the class, they are assets. They experienced devotees who are trying to get out of the material world, who is focusing purely on spirituality, who can share that with the youth who need guidance and have energy. So that's a very powerful combination. You have devotees who are slowly having their energy go down, but with a lot of wisdom. And you have young people needing illumination, needing example of renunciation from the world to be able to sustain their bhakti. And what a powerful combination of these two people together as friends, as sevaks. Actually, a Vanaprastha, if he has a home in Mayapur, he could have 5, 6, 7 rooms to accommodate young people who come and learn from him and do the needful of the house. So that's an intermediate position to an ashram of a guru who's got so many hundreds of disciples and can actually have the disciples do the devotional service. So the Vanaprastha ashram is an asset to our society. It's not a threat to a grihasta who is afraid of giving up his attachments. It's an asset for someone who wants to elevate his life. Someone who wants to prepare to die. Just look at the lives of Bhishma, who is lying on an hour of bed and revealing the essence of bhakti. And there is Vidura. And so many sages are sitting there like Narada, Sita, so many. But Krishna chooses Vidura to carry on that knowledge. And then arranges for Vidura to meet Maitreya, which by chance is the same place where Krishna was when he was about to leave the planet. And Krishna instructs Uddhava, and Maitreya listens, because Maitreya was considered still in an immature stage of realization. But Krishna wanted him to realize, so he speaks to Uddhava and instructs Uddhava to go someplace. So then Vidura and Maitreya meet, and the most wonderful, illuminating dialogue comes from that. Because Vidura also went through a Vanaprastha stage. When he's in the castle, he's being humiliated, he's being accused of being someone disloyal. And he was the most loyal to Dharma, to his family, to his brother. He gave the most beneficial advice to Dhritarashtra, and he followed none of them. And therefore the whole dynasty finished. And when he's finally humiliated, he lays his bowl on the door, isn't it? And he leaves, and he's on a pilgrimage until he finds Uddhava, and that conversation is so vibrant. But Uddhava is young, so he says, no, wait, something is waiting for you. And then he is guided to meet Maitreya Muni. Just for the record, if you look at the Bhagavatam where both of them are sitting, you see a beautiful waterfall in nature. Isn't that a clue for us? How we should be treating the planet? Many times we think as bhakti yogis we're just yukta vairagya people, concrete, cement, asphalt and petrol. But actually in the Bhagavatam we have flowers and rivers and birds and lakes. That's part of our mission, to protect those environments too. And so that's Vanaprastha life. And look at how Haridas Thakur left his body. What a perfection. At the arms of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, surrendering himself and fixing his vision on the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. And as a reward, Mahaprabhu put his foot on his chest and carries him and makes a festival for the Vaishnavas. And to end on a sweet note, see how Prabhupada left his body, teaching us how to leave the body. What did he speak in those final words? Mode of goodness, varṇāśrama-dharma, elevate yourself, be sincere. And someone told Yadava Prabhu, don't record this, And Prabhupada says, no, let him record. Everybody should see how I left the body. And he does record that video, where Prabhupada is emaciated, almost just skin and bones. But he's fully fixed into transcending. He's fully fixed in giving the message to his disciple. And just having built such a place as Sridham Mayapur, how indebted we are for him to be here. We're here because of that dream, of that effort, in all the holy dhams in the West as embassies of the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada is teaching us how to live. Because if you live, you're not afraid to die. When that your life film is spinning before you, you just say, let it roll, stop wherever it is. Oh, that kirtan, stop there, I want to go again to that kirtan. Or that class with His Holiness, Devamrita Swami, or Niranjana Swami, or Shivaram Swami, or His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. I want to go to that class again, or Chandramauli Swami. Isn't it? Or you are in Mayapur, in the Parikram, and then you, in your last day, remember, oh yes, please, let me go back to that Parikram. And you live thinking of the Holy Dham. So, live a life that your film is rolling, you're not afraid to stop in any part of your film. Just let it roll, let it roll. How you treated your friends, your devotee friends. You know, we're proud how we dealt with relationships, with the Holy Dham, with the trees of the Holy Dham, with the servants of the Holy Dham, with the visitors of the Holy Dham. Be proud of that. Krishna, you're so kind. You allowed me to be a humble servant in the Holy Dham. Thank you. Be grateful. So that's what Vanaprastha is all about. And I think it should end, if that clock is right. Let me just check. Yeah. Have a little time for interactions. There is actually a little conclusion which I like to read, which I think is beneficial. And right to the end. Vanaprastha is clearly a transitional ashram. That's a conclusion we might have. Vanaprastha is intended as a gradual transition from materialistic family life to a stage of complete renunciation. Prabhupada says in the Purport, the whole process is to drag the mind from material engagement and fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. It is based on the elevation of consciousness. Vanaprastha ashram is an ideal combination with young people for the exchange of knowledge and service. If there are Vaishnava sustainable communities, it is very easy to accommodate retiring souls and give a sense of purpose to skilled retired people. And finally, at the end of death, at the death moment, whatever video of your life is, stop it. Wherever it stops, let it roll. Okay, so if you have any questions, we have one right at the back, one here, one here. Let's see if we can accommodate. I think the Mataji right at the back, she has a question. Mataji Gita.
Thank you. Although in ISKCON we mentioned, many devotees say, we don't have done anything for Vanaprastha, but it is a natural progression, as you very nicely outlined. You know, the edge is coming up, the body is giving up, and the children are growing older. So it's a natural progression. It's not that we have to establish varṇāśrama. That's such a wrong statement, you know, to establish varṇāśrama. I mean, a Vanaprastha, sorry. So it's already there. Second point is that with Vanaprastha, you will notice that people who have Shudra tendency, I don't mean to be derogative, it's just the nature of a person, and Vaishyas, they are so attached to their occupational duties that they are not really required to take Vanaprastha and leave the family. This is mainly for higher classes who depend on Krishna. They have learned to depend on Krishna 100%. With these other two, they can continue with their service at home, teach their population, their own praja, and the local community members. But obviously, the general information is there. As Vaishnava, it does apply to everyone, obviously. So these are my observation and comments.
Very good, thank you for that. On that reflection about the great prestigious class of the Shudras, which are a great group, without them the society stops. I mean, literally. If you take your arms and you cut your legs, you go nowhere. And it's obvious, America tried to, you know, throw away the immigrants, and all of a sudden said we can't, because we are not ready to wash, to do, to clean, to organize. And so it's a glorious class, and if you have a look, their duty is to serve a superior order. So those who are connected to Brahminical, they will retire, they will go to spiritual, they will chant, they will adopt chanting also. And it's a question of who they're serving. So they very easily take their qualities. And they may be home and illuminating their community, they may be home retired, now the family takes over. So it might not be necessary for them to travel and to preach, but in their local realm, they become glorious. And they can do great service. So yes, we had a question here. Yes, and also one here.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhuji, in our ISKCON Mayapur, we have huge extensions of land. What are the impediments for us to grow our own food instead of buying?
Very good question. Why, she's asking why Mayapur, who's got so much land, is not growing its own food, and instead we are buying food. Well, to look sociologically why that's there, it'll take a whole seminar, so I won't attempt that. But I'll give you a short answer. And my answer goes to the degree that Mayapur has many missions. And Prabhupada really wanted some certain things to be in Mayapur. Like, now you come to the temple. He really wanted that. He really wanted this regulated temple life as an example to the world. And on top of that, he wanted so many things. He wanted the TOVP to be an example to the world. He wanted universities to teach the cult of bhakti. He wanted schools. He wanted a community. And he wanted farming. He did. So when you look at farming as such, you need an extensive amount of land. And the land you see here, it's all booked. It's all booked. And still not enough for everything, every project they want to do. There are so many things happening in this land. So after many years, I shared your vision to why can't Mayapur give this land? Actually, they are growing. When you have a look, most of the lands are not vacant. They're being grown, but on a temporary arrangement, because there are other arrangements being done. So your question might be, is there any plan? And yes, the answer has to be yes. Because a Vedic city cannot exist without agricultural land. If you go to any of these villages here, you see there's a village and there's agricultural land. So how would we be a bubble, a city bubble, without agriculture? So the question is how to manage, or even how to manage with existing farmlands and cooperate with them. That can also be an arrangement. And for any grihasta with 60 square meters, 70, you can grow your vegetables, your leaves. You can do a lot. I mean, we're doing, many devotees are. Once we rented from neighbors 2 bighas, and we had enough food, rice, grains, sabji, staples for 3 families. So it's a question of organization. In Jagannath Mandir, there's so many devotees who bought land and they're farming. They have banana, I just was there yesterday, banana trees and planting and crops. So the vision will come. And it will come because the world is going that direction. So someone who comes at TOVP will immediately say, where does your food come from? Then that needs to be there. So that arrangement is coming. Hare Krishna. Yes, hopefully.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. I have 2 questions. First is, when in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna at the battlefield about the Ashtanga Yoga system, here the same thing, the king is about to die in 7 days, the Ashtanga Yoga system. What is the necessity to say the Ashtanga Yoga system when a person is about to die? No, second question is that...
Could you repeat that? I didn't catch exactly.
Ashtanga Yoga system.
Standard.
No.
Astanga. Oh, standard. Okay, Astanga. Yeah.
A person is about to die. Why this instruction is required? Why not fixed to straight Bhakti Yoga?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's start with that one. Bhakti is everything. If you stop in a certain moment, you give it a name. If you just consider the mechanical aspect, it's Astanga. If you just get the knowledge, that's Jnana. But if you take the whole process, that's Bhakti. So Bhakti has everything. Everything is part of Bhakti. But if you isolate, you give it a name. That's all. Why is it bhakti? Because the whole goal of all of this is to love Krishna, and that's bhakti. So why is it mentioned? Because we need to control our mind. And how do you control your mind? You have to go through the stages. You have to fix your mind on the holy names. You're chanting and you're thinking of something else. You have to bring your mind back. So oral reception is a process of Astanga Yoga. You have to listen to the Om mantra, so you have to listen to the Maha Mantra.
This instruction has been given to Arjuna and to the king Parikshit, who are elevated souls already. So why not directly Bhakti Yoga to them?
Because this is direct Bhakti Yoga. It's only a question of saying, you are an engineer, and I say, okay, engineer, if I talk about your kindergarten, it's part of your engineer degree. It was just very long ago. So here is the first step of self-realization. So he's from the beginning going to reach the 10th canto, where you reach your Bhakti Yoga goal. Fully surrender your mind and reveal your Swarup. That's after. Here is the first step, the feet of the lotus feet of Krishna. So you're going to reach there.
That's all right, but a person is about to die, hardly some time remaining, like Khatwanga king.
Okay, so here's a question for you. So he's about to die. Why is he going to speak about the creation?
Yes, that too.
Because every time you talk about the creation, you have to go back to the origin, which is Krishna. So you take out any doubts that we are disconnected from Krishna. And here the process is to elevate. What is the first step? He's giving. And then he's going to progress until he gets to your point. So he's giving Parikshit Maharaj the whole syllabus. Here's the first step. That's the name of the chapter, the first step in self-realization.
Okay. The second question is that Banaprastha is a compulsory system. Why? Because it is written śucau vivikta. Banaprastha should be going to a vivikta place, to a secluded place, and do the austerity there, fully fix his mind on Krishna. And Prahlad Maharaj says the same thing. Living on the kupam, we should be Harim Ashrayat.
Yes.
So here, but if you're saying if the family life is favorable to you, one can become in the grihastha life and continue the sadhana. So the contrast.
Your question is interesting because basically what you're asking is, should we really leave home because that's the instruction or not? And the basic instruction is not to leave or not leave. The basic instruction is to get rid of attachment. Your grihanda kupa is attachment. So if you're attached to the grihanda kupa, then you have to leave. But if you transcend grihanda kupa, then you have an asset, because isn't it easier? You already lived in that house for 30 years, you know everything, you preach, you travel, it's easier. Then now having to travel, find another situation, and the most difficult thing is when you do that, and you're not ready. So you go to the dam to find another home, and get all your little arrangements. You get to a place, oh, can I have this, can I have that? I don't eat this, and then you start creating a whole other home as a preacher. So when it's natural, you see, Prabhupada, he was not demanding anything. He's simply accepting whatever comes. Because it's natural. He's really seeing what he's speaking. So the mission is to get rid of attachment, because attachment, what's an attachment? Think of a horse, a little pole. Attachment is you hook the horse on the ground so he can only go to a certain area, right? So if you attach, you cannot be free. It's simple as that. And spiritual freedom means you have to go wherever Krishna is indicating. And if you attach, you can't go. What about this? What about that? I can't do this. I can't do that. So when you remove the attachment, it doesn't matter if it's favorable or not favorable, if it's good, if it's hot, if it's cold, because it's Krishna's desire.
So when the family is favorable, circumstances are favorable for bhakti, so naturally one will be taking service from the family. For example, wife will do service to the husband. So naturally there will be attachment.
No, because the attachment changes to Krishna. So instead of the wife coming and serving the husband, she starts to think, my husband is serving the deity, so I'm serving the deity through him. And the mind changes. That's exactly what vanaprastha is. From, I am receiving this service, Krishna is receiving this service, I'm just a recipient. And the desire to enjoy the home reduces, goes. And now the home becomes a temple. And I do my duty like Krishna wants. And it's not about, I am the boss, I say I am the leader. No, you give up that. And you start to find your spiritual position. But because there's culture, people respect you as a senior, and they will respect your position. But not that you demand anymore. You're done with position.
Still in subtle way, there will be attachment. And he'll be praying to Krishna, oh Krishna, after I leave, please look after her. No?
Well, if the devotee is saying like that, the attachment is there, then he must leave. And then, for him, he should stay in the hot sun deliberately, stay there in scorching sun. The 11th canto is saying, if it's rainy, stay in the rain. Don't store any food. So he understands, I shouldn't be attached. But if he understands it's all for Krishna, then what's the need of leaving? Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank
Well, we'll end here. I passed my time. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for your kind and patient hearing. I hope it was beneficial. Granta